Everybody joining me as my guest this week. We're talking Texas Longhorn football because they had a big win on Saturday against the Michigan Wolverines on the road. And joining me to break it all down, Jonathan Davis. You can check him out over at Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And Jonathan, I appreciate the time. Exciting times around the Texas Longhorns right now.
Yeah, we were down for a long time, man. You know what I'm saying? To wear this hat or, represent Texas meant you were getting clowned and we were underachieving and it just been a lot of bad things. So gratefully, over the last couple of years it's been good and now it's really good, coming off a big victory over the, Michigan Wolverines in the big house.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. With everything going on in that game, win 31-12. What was your expectations for the game kind of going in? Were you shocked by the result, or were you kind of think, okay, I kind of figured this what Texas was going to do?
Yeah, I think it's a combination for sure. I mean, like you saw the spread go from -3.5 to -7.5 after both teams played. I think it settled at 7, on the dot. But after Texas, beat Colorado State 52-0, and then Michigan struggled, against Fresno State. I think Vegas and everybody else was like, okay, Texas should win this game. And so I felt good about it. You know what I mean? Like I felt good about Texas winning. Did I think they would go in there and win 31-12? And really, that was a garbage time touchdown to Samaj Morgan at the end. I mean, it's really 31-6, for the most
Yeah.
part. Did I think they would dominate from the outset? I mean, did I think they would, get that crowd quiet 5 minutes in the game? I mean, that game was over at halftime. Like we're
Mhm.
keeping it real, that game was over at halftime. So I thought Texas would win. I thought they had a pretty good chance to cover the spread, but I thought it would be a close game in the fourth quarter. I thought Michigan would be able to play their game a little bit more. But I mean, Texas made them a passing team from the second quarter on. So, I thought Texas would win. I felt good about them going, in there on the road and, at least winning by about a touchdown. I thought the spread would be, depending on where you got it at, could be a challenge, could not be. I thought they'd win, maybe by a touchdown. But did I think they'd win 31-12? Did I think they'd dominate Michigan in that fashion? No, I did not. I was definitely surprised by that. But I think it's just a testament to where Texas is right now as a program and where Michigan is right now as a program as well. Michigan's trying to figure things out. Texas looks like they got it figured out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people going into the game thought, okay, Texas should win the game because just their offense is going to be problems for Michigan. And Michigan's got good players, but they're just a young football team. I mean, a lot of their starters were gone from last year. Eventually, yes, Texas would offense would just take advantage, and then the defense of Michigan would wear out. But I think they didn't score on that opening drive, but I think that opening drive was a tone setter. They went right down the field on Michigan, had the penalty, took the touchdown away, and then of course they missed a field goal. But still, that opening drive, then you get the ball again, you go down and you score a touchdown. It's just from the outset. I mean, the offense and just Quinn Ewers, they just seem like they were in control the whole time.
Yeah, you talk about that opening drive. I really, that's a good point. I really do think that was the tone setter because you converted 3 third downs on that drive. At least the way I remember. The first one was the huge one where you got backed up. I think Cam Williams had 4 penalties like the first 2 drives in the game. You know what I mean? Like 2 false starts and then the holding that brought back the touchdown. But you had the big, 33-yard pass to Isaiah Bond on like 3rd and 13, which was a huge conversion. I remember another one was the inside screen where they kind of motioned Jaden Blue out to the right. And then you threw the inside screen to Isaiah Bond. He picked up a 3rd down. And I think Matthew Golden picked up the other one, right? But every time on that first drive that Michigan's defense kind of had Texas's back against the wall, Quinn Ewers found a way to convert, right? And they just continued to move the ball down the field. I think, they ran over 40 plays in the first half, and like 80% of them, 75% of them were on Michigan side of the field, right? And so they were just able to do whatever they wanted. Steve Sarkisian was able to call whatever he wanted. Quinn Ewers, the offensive line, and the running backs were able to execute however they wanted. And that's why you saw the result that you saw this past Saturday. But yeah, the first drive really showed, me, and everybody else in the country, 100,000 people in the stands, that yes, this Michigan defense is really good, but you're dealing with something else. You're dealing with something different on that other side. And Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, and this offense, they just imposed their will. And like I said, they were able to do whatever they wanted to do to this Michigan defense on Saturday.
Yeah, I think too. A lot of people look at Quinn Ewers as like, okay, he's just great from the pocket, but he showed on Saturday, his mobility, how he could use it. I mean, there's a couple times where he had to, move up in the pocket, and there was one play, and Joe Klatt highlighted it during the broadcast. A little pump fake on the linebacker against Michigan just froze him up just enough where he could pick up. I think got a first down on the play. So I think Quinn Ewers. Another way he was controlling the game, just his feet. I mean, a lot of people don't give him credit for that, but he was showcasing that on Saturday too.
Yeah, he, kind of really, added that to his bag last year. I think 5 rushing touchdowns last season, and really showed an ability on third downs and, some of those crucial downs when he was pressured, being able to, take off and run and, keep this offense on the field. And I thought, he really grew up on Saturday. We've seen him have those big performances before in those big Alabama games, but I thought he grew up. When Michigan did get pressure, when Michigan did get in his face, he did a good job of, like you said, navigating in the pocket, moving his feet, moving up, right, getting to the left, getting to the right, or running. You know what I mean, and making plays. And I thought that just whatever they threw at him, he remained poised through it. For sure. And it just really didn't look like he was rattled at all. I just was talking to Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus, and I said, I know he's technically been in the big house before, as CJ Stroud's backup, but he played like he had just been there before. I mean, he played like he was in DKR. He really grew up, and like I said, and like you said, just being able to move his feet, constantly moving left, right, up in the pocket. He was just really poised, and I think the team followed. Right, you're gonna go into battle, and you're gonna follow your leaders. You're gonna emulate your leaders. Right, Steve Sarkisian walked in there just cool as a fan with the Ray-Bans on, and Quinn Ewers was just cool as a fan as well on the football field, and the rest of the team followed suit. But great performance from Quinn. Passing game wasn't great in the second half, but he did all his work. All the work he needed in the first half, and he really grew up. I asked Max Chadwick, did he answer any long-term questions, right? And we know Quinn Ewers is a really good college quarterback, right? But now we're starting to look at how does he project to the National Football League level? You know what I mean? And I think he answered a lot of those questions this past Saturday. He looked like an NFL quarterback at times in the first half against Michigan.
Overall as a team, they rushed for 143 yards, which he contributed to that. And of course, coming into the season, I know the injuries at running back. First 2 games in, how would you grade how the Texas running backs have played so far?
Well, Texas run for 333 yards in the first 2 games, right? So
Yeah.
dominant, right? That's how I graded 10 out of 10, if not 11 out of 10. What I said, after the Colorado State game is, Steve Sarkisian for a long time has had great running backs, right? And so I'm not even sure if his offense and, what he calls has gotten credit for his great running games. When you have guys like Najee Harris, Roshan Johnson, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, you're like, well, damn, you know what I mean? Of course they're running the ball well because they're, some of the best running backs in the country. But then you lose a Cedric Baxter, you lose a Christian Clark, you have 3 scholarship running backs on the roster, and you go out and dominate, Colorado State with 190 yards on the ground, and then you come back against this Michigan defense, one of the best defensive lines in the country, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart, and others, and you run for over 140 yards as well. No running back had a great performance or an outstanding performance individually, but collectively your running backs receiving and rushing combined for 140 yards. So, I'm saying that Steve Sarkisian's, offense is running back friendly. You could put damn near any running back with talent in there, especially behind that experienced offensive line, and they're going to do a really good job. And yeah, I thought our running backs, were great in the Michigan game. And I thought there was like 1 or 2 drives in particular that I remember where they just started gashing them. I think it was Trey Wisner. I mean, he was gashing them like 6-7 yards at a time, right? I mean, they were just, running that inside zone. Their defense never forced Steve Sarkisian off his pivot, right? They never forced him to really adjust too much, right? I mean, he still was able to run his inside zone. And then, when they were starting to get a push or when he wanted to go away from it, quick passes to the outside, right? Neutralizing that pass rush. So, I thought our running backs were great. Something that people may not, realize or may not remember. Only 2 wide receivers caught a pass in this game. I know Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore had passes called back, but Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden were the only 2 wide receivers that caught a pass in this game. Of course, Gunnar Helm went for 98 yards, but everything else was to the running backs. Like literally everything else was to the running backs. And so they did such a good job of controlling the ground game, also making good plays in the receiving game. Like I said, they combined for 140 total yards. Jared Gibson, Jaden Blue, and Trey Wisner, and they were one of the biggest reasons that 3-headed monster that people didn't think was a 3-headed monster when Cedric Baxter went down, 333 rushing yards through 2 games. They've been absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, and looking at the way the first half ended, and that was the big swing moment too, because it was 17-3. Michigan looked like they were doing a little something. They were getting close to midfield, but then there was the Loveland fumble, and then Texas they ended the game there. When it went into halftime, I ain't gonna lie, Jonathan. I said, okay, this game's over. We know 24-3. I didn't think Michigan could come back from 17-3, much less 24-3. Just that moment and how Texas just capitalized on the Michigan mistakes too in the first half.
Yeah, and let me, backtrack a little bit. I said 333 rushing yards through 2 games, which is true, right? But you did have the 55-yard run from Ryan Wingo. So
Yeah.
let me give him credit for sure, for 55 of those yards, the other 280 from the running backs. I think and then Isaiah Bond had like a 25-yard run in the first game. So Steve Sarkisian just getting everybody involved, in the running game for sure. But yeah, I mean, that was a huge swing, and like you said, it felt over, at 17-3. It didn't feel like Davis Warren and that Michigan offense could match, Quinn Ewers and that offense score for score. But you're in a situation where Michigan is driving at the end of the first half and they get the ball immediately out of the second half. So if they figure something out, even if they get 3 points, you know what I'm saying, on both ends of that, it's 17-9. It's a one possession game. If they get a touchdown and a field goal, you know what I mean? Like anything could have happened in that stretch, right? That's why people talk about that going into the half, coming out of the half. Those two drives typically determine football games. And yeah, you're able to not only take the ball from them, but then go down and score one of the biggest plays of the game, one of the best plays of Quinn Ewers' career, being able to roll to the left, squaring his body, and throwing that comeback route. I mean, on the money, a straight dime to Matthew Golden for the touchdown. So, like you said, you talked about, Michigan going down, having a chance to score with them getting the ball right back after halftime. And instead that turns into another Texas touchdown, essentially the dagger in them. Huge moment in that game. And, probably the moment we all knew that Michigan was cooked for sure.
Yeah, it's so deflating if you're on the Michigan side of things because of that, because you're looking, you're probably okay, we're
And
down
he was
73.
untouched too. I mean, he literally just dropped it. You know what I'm
Yeah, I
saying? Like,
know.
thank you. You know what I mean? That was insane, man. That was insane.
I
One of the
was
best players
watching
in the country, arguably the best tight end in the country at his position, and just a huge blunder at the worst possible time.
I know I'm watching the game on TV and he dropped it. At first, I'm like, did he ever catch it? But he did, and they ruled it as such. But yeah, I was just kind of shocked. I'm like, there's nobody there, but you just drop it. Shows it can happen to anybody, no matter how good you are. But like I say, so deflating for the Michigan side because you probably are down 17-3. So okay, but we can go down, score, at least get a field goal, open the second half a touchdown. We're back right back in it. But then it just flips. And of course, obviously, coming out of the game, we're talking about how Quinn Ewers played. Obviously, and a guy that belongs in. I know we're only added 2 weeks. Heisman Trophy guy. He needs to be mentioned with those players. But the defense, going into the year, you've lost, Tivondre Sweat. Brian Murphy are gone. Jalen Ford also, but they still got some stars. I know Anthony Hill played well for this team last year and has started this way too as well. What's been your look on this defense? Because obviously people want to talk about the offense because of Ewers, but how well this defense is looking so far.
Yeah, I thought the defense was absolutely outstanding. Michigan didn't have a ton of pass to victory in this game, but if they did, they were going to run the ball, a ton with Donovan Edwards and their backup and keep this Texas offense off the field. And, our defense just didn't allow that. I thought they bowed up in the front and really shut them down. I mean, talk about Donovan Edwards, 70 total yards through 2 games, right? On the cover of NCAA 25. And I mean, man, you talk about him as superstar in college football. I haven't seen it through the first 2 weeks. I know he's had some big games in the past, but your best players got to be your best players in moments like this. But they really forced Michigan to be a passing offense, and Michigan's not going to beat a lot of teams, let alone the Texas Longhorns. Trying to be a passing team this year from what you saw with Davis Warren, and then obviously Alex Orji, like Joel Klatt said, 90% of the time when he's in, they run. So you're not even worried about the pass when he's in the game. But, I thought you saw just so many spectacular performances from the defense. The defensive line showed out. Colin Simmons, 5-star freshman, he came in at the end, the 1 sack, and, just really put, a lot of pressure on Davis Warren. The linebackers shot out of a cannon once again. David Benda and Anthony Hill, they were all over the field. But talk about the secondary. Jahdae Barron picked up the fumble, but he made some great plays. Jalen Gilbo at the corner position coming down, making some great plays. You go out in the portal and you get a 3-year starter at safety, Austin area kid Andrew Makuba, who absolutely just put his footprint all over the game, pass deflections, tackles for loss, interceptions. So when you look at it, this Texas defense was just absolutely phenomenal. And, Max Chadwick, just from Pro Football Focus, my episode will drop tomorrow on Locked On Longhorns, or it'll drop on Tuesday on Locked On Longhorns, I should say. And, he talked about how the defense helped the offense so much, right? You're talking about those big guys that are really the anchor of Michigan's defense, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, right? But the offense is continuously going 3 and out, right? And, you just keep putting those big defensive tackles back on the field. They're getting gassed, right? And they're just not as productive as you normally would expect them to be, right? Because they're used to, sitting on the sidelines, Michigan controlling time of possession, and then those guys are fresh and they can come in and just hunt, right? But Michigan's offense continued to go 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. And so the defense did a really good job. And of course, that helped the offense because, like I said, the defense was on the field so much that just, after about 4 or 5 drives, they just weren't effective at all.
So looking ahead, now next up is UT San Antonio, which I know on Monday, Steve Sarkisian warned, let's not be a Notre Dame situation. And then you got losing Monroe. Then you got Mississippi State in the SEC opener. You're off, and then you play Oklahoma in the big matchup. And then you got Georgia, Oklahoma and Georgia back to back weeks. October is big for the Texas team. But you look at these upcoming weeks before those matchups coming. What would you like to see out of Texas as they kind of continue to build on this season?
Just absolute dominance. In 2022, I was at the Alabama game where we lost 20-19. With Bryce Young and Jameer Gibbs making those exceptional plays at the end, and you looked at it and you was like, okay, Texas is on the right track, right? And then the very next week we're down 17-7 to UTSA. You know what I mean? And then last year we beat Alabama on the road, and then the very next week we're tied going into the fourth quarter with Wyoming, right? And so that's why Steve Sarkisian, I mean, he's literally speaking from experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't go beat a team like Michigan and then just get, you know what I mean? Like, so high and so full of yourself that you come back and don't take a team like UTSA seriously. So I'll be at the game, this Saturday against UTSA. I think they need to come out and punch them in the mouth, right? We need to see a lot of Arch Manning in this game. I mean, I thought they damn near were going to put him in against Michigan the way it was going, but they just come out and just prove that you're the second best team in the country. We've seen scenarios where Oregon has struggled, only beating Boise State by 3 points, only beating Idaho by, 10 points, whatever it was. We just saw Oklahoma only beat Houston by 4 points. Obviously, you brought up the example of, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. So, you do got to play 60 minutes of football, right? And I suppose anything can happen. I know they lose to UTSA. You might never see me on Locked On Longhorns again. I know that. But, like, just go out there and be absolutely dominant. Obviously, ULM and UTSA, they should not, I mean, those shouldn't be any types of games, right? Those games they should be out of question by the end of the first quarter, early second quarter at best. So just go out there and prove you are who you think you are, prove you are what we've seen, like they did with Colorado State, at 52-0. Not saying there has to be any type of score, not saying, particular score, not saying that they have to cover the spread even necessarily, whatever it is, but just go out there and prove that you're a dominant Texas team against a team that really doesn't belong on the field against you, right? And that's what I expect to see over the next two games. In ULM and UTSA. And that's what I expect to see in some of these SEC games, right? You look at Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, right? I mean, South Carolina barely squeaking by, Old Dominion. Like, these teams on your schedule outside of, Georgia. I mean, really, really outside of Georgia, all of them had falters, right? Arkansas blowing, double-digit lead to Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, the way they looked against Notre Dame. So there's a lot of teams on Texas' schedule. The way that Texas has looked and the way that those teams have looked, Texas should go in there and really handle business and dominate them. That's why I especially expect to see the next 2 weeks against ULM and UTSA.
I asked you this question to close up with the schedule. I know with the history of Texas football, anybody that's followed the team has been a fan team for a long time. Kind of be excited about the move to the SEC because we talk about with college these conference expansions losing rivalries. Texas got rivalries back. Going to Arkansas, getting the A&M rivalry game. That's just got to be for anybody that's a fan of Texas. It's got to be exciting just to have those rivalries back on the schedule.
Yeah, I'm so happy, especially with, you talk about the Arkansas game, even though we did play in 2021. So happy for our older fans, that, watch that, rivalry in the, SWC. And then, now you get to see that every year again, going on the road, in a tough environment in Arkansas. And then, Texas A&M. I was in high school, the last time they played. I'm 30 years old now. So being able to see that matchup every year and, battle for Texas, at Kyle Field and then at DKR, every year alternating. So just huge matchups for Texas. Like you said, you talked about realignment, so many teams, losing huge rivalries. We just talked about Oklahoma, how Oklahoma and Oklahoma State aren't playing and how weird that feels. You know what I mean? And, I know a lot of, Texas fans don't feel like Texas Tech is a rivalry, but that's a game that I'm like, damn, we're not playing Texas Tech this year. But, like I said, Texas may have come out the best out of anybody with conference realignment, getting these huge rivalries with Texas A&M and Arkansas back, a huge part of the season. But, once again, like I said, those teams have both showed a lot of chinks in the armor early. And even though those are huge rivalry games and typically anything can happen in those games, I think Texas just has really, they got their sights really high this year. You know what I mean? Like Texas, like Joel Klatt said, if you want to win the national championship, you're going to have to go through the Texas Longhorns this season. So as big as those games could be, Texas should go in there and handle business against both of those teams.
Yeah, it's just going to be fun and ending the season right with Texas A&M. I'm glad that's just as a college football fan. I'm glad to see that. And Jonathan, it's been a lot of fun having you on talking all things Texas Longhorns. Just the listener viewers will check you out. Where can they find you?
Yeah, Jonzo Ball, like Lonzo Ball on my personal Twitter, Locked On Horns, the Locked On Longhorns Twitter, and then Locked On Longhorns on, audio and YouTube, just wherever you get your podcast, come through, like, comment, subscribe, talking good ball all year about the Texas Longhorns for sure. So, if you need any Texas Longhorns content, Locked On Longhorns on our way to a national championship. Hook 'em.
There you go. There you go. Well, Jonathan, again, appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Yes, sir. Hook 'em.